Hello, 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 and good morning, all of you beautiful nerds. What is going on? And welcome to the morning stream here on the Den of Nerds Live. The very best way to start your nerdy day. On today's show, folks, we're talking some Star Wars. Lots of Star Wars to get into. Yesterday, Mark Hamill penned an open letter to Star Wars fans. Basically, he out, fam. He out. We're going to talk about what that means. Going to talk about the completely mature reaction from Star Wars fans on Twitter. Also want to get into the fact that thank you, Ryan Johnson, and thank you, J.J. Abrams. We're trending last night as, once again, Star Wars fans very maturely hash out their disagreements over the internet. I want to get into this. Haven't really dug into Star Wars in some time, but I've got some thoughts. I want to lay my thoughts out there and just see what you guys think as well. So we're doing the thing that we should never do, and that is dive deeply on Star Wars topics and talk about the fandom and different things like that. But in either case, good morning to everybody. How's everybody doing? I see a bunch of awesome people here in the chat. I see I need more chicken nuggets. I see Trinity. I see Brian. I see Mark, XR Coon, Marvel Maniac, Trev, Jason, Audio Fly, Wavy, the Lonely Banter's in here. Trev, what's going on? Maverick's here, Yinzer Jim, Mike Porter, Bill's in here, Dakota's in here, Star Wars Santa. That'll get folks' attention. Yeah. How's everybody doing? It's good to see you guys. It's good to see you guys. And it'll be good to talk about this discussion. By the way, I got to order my kiddos do math homework. Awesome. Love me some Star Wars talk? Heck yeah. Oh, we're going to get into all of it. But I just want to say, too, guys, I still have to order my Taylor Lane coffee. And instead, I got a different kind of coffee. And I got to tell you guys, man, this coffee tastes terrible. Terrible. Once you get addicted to the official coffee of the morning streams, Taylor Lane organic coffee, and then you go to a different type of coffee, it's just not the same. That's just the normal face that you make when you're checking something like that. We'll get through it. Sometimes you got to get through it, but it's a lesson. Every sip of this disgusting acidic coffee that I taste is just a lesson of why I should have ordered my Taylor Lane official coffee of the morning streams. Use code NERD10 at checkout to save 10%. Taylor Lane organic coffee. Every sip is a lesson. Oh my God. Okay, we're good. Okay, guys. Yeah, chop that like button if you guys could get into this. Chat, put me on the big screen, man. Put me on the big boy. Turn the music down. All right. Let's talk some Star Wars, guys. Got some thoughts. So yesterday, Mark Hamill penned an open letter to Star Wars fans. Okay? And I'm going to read this letter for you. This was posted on Twitter. Maybe many of you have seen this letter already. And, yeah, so let's start by reading the letter. And then we'll talk about the reactions to fans, what's going on in the world, and just kind of my thoughts and my perspective on the Star Wars fandom. Are there ambient ocean sounds playing? Is the Hoth? Oh, we got the... For those of you that were on the Patreon stream yesterday, that is hilarious. For those of you that were on the Patreon stream yesterday, we had a little Hoth going on in the morning stream just now. Okay, don't worry. We got it handled. Also had a fun time with you guys with the Patreon stream yesterday. Okay, so let's read this. Coming from Mark Hamill. What an extraordinary journey it's been. Back in 1976, when Carrie, Harrison, and I were testing for our roles in what was then called The Adventures of Luke Starkiller, as taken from the Journal of the Wills, Saga 1, The Star Wars. There's no way we could have known what an incredibly rich and imaginative set of adventures this obscure little space movie would launch, inspiring 8 more chapters to tell the entire Skywalker story. For some of you, that journey began with us over 40 years ago, inviting Star Wars into your lives from the seats of just a few dozen theaters in its first days of release. For others, you may have joined us somewhere along the way, from the harrowing saga of young Anakin's descent to the dark side in the prequel trilogy, or the introduction of an entirely new generation of heroes in the sequel trilogy. As Carrie once said, Star Wars is about family. And that is what we have all become. One giant community that shares the common experience of these stories and the fundamental values they instill in us. Whether you're a relative newcomer to the Star Wars galaxy or a long-time UPF ultra-passionate fan, I am deeply thankful for your continued enthusiasm and dedication to George's faraway galaxy, which will continue to grow with new storytellers, building an even bigger galaxy filled with heroes, villains, action, romance, and, of course, the Force. May the Force be with you always. Signed, Mark Hamill. So, first of all, let me just say that that's really weird. I don't even know why he did this letter. You know what I mean? I got to be honest. I really don't. May have been something he actually had wanted to talk about. It may have been something that he wanted to say even before. You know what I mean? Mark famously had a lot of disagreements with Rian Johnson about the Luke Skywalker character in The Last Jedi. I think if you were to ask Mark honestly, I believe that he would tell you that he does feel a certain amount of wronged by the sequel trilogy in general. Now, what's crazy is we all know that because of the hyper-passionate fans, I mean, let's just call it what it is, the toxicity. Because of the toxicity towards The Last Jedi, Mark sort of, I mean, I can't imagine what that's like. He must be in like a super weird spot because a lot of what he said and what he was saying was weaponized by people that wanted to detract from The Last Jedi. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting situation for Mark. I try to put myself into like his shoes of what it must be like, because if you watch the behind-the-scenes stuff for Star Wars, he obviously wanted to come back, have a run of the trilogy. He didn't want to have cameos. He wanted to be heavily involved. And that didn't happen. You know what I mean? That didn't happen. And I know that Star Wars fans have their own feelings about this sort of stuff, and they want to say what it is. I mean, look, if you can take all the bullshit away, let it all go away, I believe for sure, Mark Hamill feels wronged by the sequel trilogy. That's just fact. You know what I mean? That's in my mind, as I objectively try to think about it, there's no way he doesn't. You know what I mean? And if you look at his comments towards The Rise of Skywalker, you know, getting caught in interviews saying, you know, they ask him if he's done with Star Wars, and he's saying, God, I hope so. You know what I mean? God, I hope so. And different things like that. I think that Mark has become so, not only, you know, feel a certain way about the way the story went, but he also probably has a lot of issues with the fans. You know what I mean? And so I think that this letter should have never been made. You know? Now, Mark is just trying to be Mark. This is the problem that he always runs into. He's just trying to be himself. And I think that Mark thinks that what he did and what he said in this letter was great, or somehow brings closure to it all, or whatever. But in all seriousness, there's no reason for him to write this letter. You know what I mean? Technically, in the letter, it doesn't even say that he's done forever or whatnot. And it feels so. I mean, look, this is just my thoughts and this is just my opinions on it. You know what I mean? It is what it is. You can have different opinions about it, and I think that we'll get into Q&A in a little bit because there's a lot more that we got to talk about. It's not just the Mark Hamill stuff that I want to talk about, but I think it's important to talk about the Mark Hamill stuff. This letter doesn't serve a purpose. The last paragraph of this letter feels like the start of a letter that we needed a long time ago. Not just from Mark, but from a lot of different people at Lucasfilm. And at the end of the day, this idea that all of the Star Wars fan base is a family and that we're all in this together. I mean, like, this is one of the things that frustrates me so much about Star Wars. You guys know, if you've been watching the channel for a long, long time, or even if you haven't, if you just sort of are aware of my content and what I like to talk about and just in general what we do over here, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. But I think it's so ridiculous that we don't acknowledge what Star Wars has become and what the Star Wars fan base has become. You know what I mean? I feel personally like I don't even necessarily want to talk about Star Wars that much or make Star Wars content because I feel like I'm talking to a bunch of people that are holding and sort of clinging on to their preferred delusion. You know, some fans want to pretend that the retractors of Star Wars are a vocal minority and that there's nothing wrong with Star Wars and Star Wars is all gravy. And any attempt to shatter that reality or anything that you say to try to speak to the truth of what's going on is seen as offensive and sort of an affront to those people, right? Then there are other people on the exact opposite of that side that are super convinced that everything is destroyed, horrible, forever gone, fire and brimstone, it's dead. You know what I mean? And those people, they act just as harshly against anything that you say counter to the point. And when Mark said this, if you look at the reaction on Twitter, you know, it's just very telling. It's Star Wars fans being Star Wars fans. It's the same toxicity that other fandoms make fun of us for. You know what I mean? I was watching a video yesterday about the Dragon Ball fandom. And look, I'm gonna hit you with the real shit today because I gotta tell you. You know what I mean? If you can't handle real talk, then get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? Like, get the fuck out of here, honestly. I was watching a video about the Dragon Ball fandom. There's a crazy toxic thing that's going on in the Dragon Ball fandom as well. It all has to do with Vic Mignogna. Do you guys know about this situation with Vic Mignogna? It's like a Me Too thing, basically, right? And so that situation tore the Dragon Ball community apart. And there's a rough situation going on in the Dragon Ball fandom where the focus of the fandom became an issue within the fandom that falls across party lines and has to do with this culture war. And I saw Dragon Ball fans talking about how they think from their perspective that the Dragon Ball fandom is doing everything they can to become as toxic as the Star Wars fandom. And it was like a little click in my head. You know? I was like, holy shit. It's true, man. true. It's bad, guys. You know what I mean? It's bad. It's bad in ways that most of us are unwilling to acknowledge. And I think that the real thing here, man, is like even Mark, right? Even Mark, he seems to be caught in a constant juggling or sort of spinning of plates. He seems to be wanting to spin these plates. It's obvious he had major problems with what was going on with Luke Skywalker, which mirrors the problems that a lot of people had with The Last Jedi. That's obvious. And yet, he's sort of taken a stance and done things and other things to sort of downplay that and act like he doesn't want to associate with those fans. You know what I mean? He wants to be the good corporate boy or whatever, you know? And I think that it's like what we deserve as Star Wars fans, honestly, is to just hear the truth. You know what I mean? I just want to hear the truth from these different people. And I feel as though that Lucasfilm and these people they certainly haven't done a good enough job to be real with how the whole situation is going and where the fandom is at. And everybody's like, it's a weird two-faced kind of game, man. Nobody's being honest. You know what I mean? Nobody's being honest. And so the hashtags, in classic Star Wars fan fashion, yesterday the hashtag started with the two dug insides of this stupid fucking fan war, supporting and tweeting out their thank you Rian Johnson and then thank you J.J. Abrams hashtags. And this super passive-aggressive fuckboy bullshit Twitter war. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating, man. I don't know what the solution is exactly for the Star Wars fan base. But, like, I think, honestly, that there's no fucking adults in this room. Nobody's being and that includes Mr. Mark Hamill. I'm sorry, but I feel like this letter is horse shit. I feel like this letter is ill-conceived, quarantine-induced dribble. Like it's fucking it's the fourth month in the year after this movie came out. Like, what? What is this letter? Mark. If any, and this is just, this is honestly my message to anybody out there when it comes to the Star Wars fan, because this is a celebrity thing. This is a producer thing. This is a corporate thing. All of you people are not helping the problem. Clearly, you're not helping the problem. And the reason you're not helping the problem is because, A, nobody's willing to admit the truth to people because they don't want to, you know, oh, we got to act like everything's cool. We got to act like everything's cool. Nobody wants to admit the truth of what's going on. And everybody's so focused on protecting their personal brand or their personal shit that nobody's willing to come out and just admit stuff. So, Mr. Hamill, if you really want to help the Star Wars fan base, why don't you take some time and actually craft a message to both groups of fans and talk about what's actually going on? Don't try to give us a letter that out of context will show up in a documentary years later that feels right and it'll make everybody feel good. That's not, we don't need that bullshit right now. That ship has sailed. You know, I feel like we were close. There was a couple moments where we were close. Bob Iger particularly had a moment leading up to the rise of Skywalker, talking about how the fans are very passionate. We understand that they're passionate and therefore they can complain and all this stuff. Dig into that. What does that mean? What does it mean? What are you going to do with Star Wars to try to fix things? Because this letter by Mark Hamill, this ain't it, Chief. You know what I mean? This ain't it. And it's like the whole situation. The whole situation. Everybody's on guard at Lucasfilm. Nobody wants to talk real shit. You know what we need? We need some adults and we need some Jedi. You need to address the toxicity. Don't engage the toxicity. Nobody at Lucasfilm has come out and said this. Like, it's crazy to me that no one at Lucasfilm has come out and said, hey, you know what? When we see that on social media, the majority of Star Wars hashtags and things are literally passive-aggressive people just trying to combat at each other, and this is just not okay. I don't see that. And you know what else too? Here's another thing. I think that we're and I'm just on one today. I'm just on one. So, you know what I mean? Like, we'll be back to your regularly scheduled positivity later, but not today. I also think that people are crazy if they don't see where some of these fans are coming from. Right? The behavior is usually not acceptable, but the position that they hold is probably pretty understandable. I mean, think about Luke Skywalker. You know, specifically, like I just said, we should all be able to acknowledge that Mark had big problems with Luke in The Last Jedi. And we should all be able to acknowledge that in the same way that Mark wanted to have a run of the trilogy, that was in his original contract, in the same way that he wanted to have a run of the trilogy, the fans wanted a run of the trilogy with Luke Skywalker. I totally get Rey. I totally get wanting to have Rey be the focus. Then you should have done 6 movies, and the first 6 films should have focused on the baton passing, and then the next 3 should have been Rey and Kylo and all that on around, okay? If fans grew up with the OT and they love Luke Skywalker, we have to be able to acknowledge that in some ways it is understandable for those people to be upset about the portrayal of Luke Skywalker and also the lack of Luke Skywalker in the sequel trilogy in general. We should be able to acknowledge that, to talk about it like adults, instead of making stupid hashtags or holding up mugs that say fanboy tears or all this passive-aggressive bullshit. Where are the adults? Where are the adults? Like, I don't get it. There's such a displacement of responsibility from the top down. And you know what? I know a lot of you guys, you know, a lot of you guys have maybe certain feelings about how I feel about Kathy Kennedy, right? Well, I'll tell you right now, the biggest failing of Kathy Kennedy, the thing that I am most frustrated by when it comes to her leadership is your fandom is fucking melting down. What are you going to do about it? She hasn't made statements. It seems as though every time she comes out to talk about the fandom, she puts her foot in her mouth. This is one of the biggest franchises of all time. If you can't come out and figure out a strategy to handle what is going on in your fandom, hire a firm, hire someone to come in and be the voice or whatever. Messaging shouldn't be a problem in the year 2020 when you have the resources of Disney behind you. The sin of omission in Disney's part from trying to control the narrative and try to quell this thing before it got out of hand and allowing employees of Lucasfilm to fan those flames, that is why she needs to go. That is ultimately the biggest sin of her leadership. And I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of the fact that we can't even fucking talk about it. Like, nobody wants to even talk about it. It's horrible. It's horrible. At the same time, why can't we be adults about it? I understand that Twitter is a place where you just go to shit post and just argue and do all these things. But where are the adults? Where are the adults in this Star Wars war kind of thing? I just... It's like everybody's got a dog in the fight. Everybody's like, I just feel like this... I read this letter by Mark, and thank you, Jonathan. I see the super chat, and I appreciate you. Get me some Taylor Lane coffee because I need it. You're damn right. This super acidic horse piss of coffee ain't gonna do it. I'm ordering my Taylor Lane right after this stream. It's like I feel as though maybe they want to just focus on the content, make the content really good, work on the content and all of that. But that's like, again, that is ignoring. Like, is this really the plan, Star Wars? Is this really what you want to do? You want to just ignore that you have the most toxic fandom out right now? And it's all over the place. You're just going to ignore that? Awesome. Awesome. Look, I just don't see a way. I guess what I'm going to say, this is the last thing I'll say, and then we'll talk about some of the other news. This is the last thing I'm going to say. I don't see a way out for them from a public relations perspective unless they take some licks. Humble yourself. Come out and admit that things are not where they should be. Come out and admit that you know that you could have done a lot better. Come out and admit that you haven't been able to listen to fans. You haven't been smart enough to realize really what fans want in a lot of instances. Like, I see a lot of shit like in PR these days. I think the PR game is actually pretty simple. The PR game is pretty simple because I think, like, as a way of, for instance, let's say you're a company and you do something and it's considered by a lot of the fans that was a bad look. Right? So one of the things that I think about a lot, Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering, I play the game a lot. I love the game. WotC, Wizards of the Coast, look, they're going to get a lot of heat, man. There's a lot, just like all fandoms, and I saw some people talking about this, just like all fandoms, there are a side of fandom that's very toxic. There's a side of fandom that's very skeptical, that wants to feel extra on the side of the consumer. There's this idea of a conflict always between those that produce the content and those that consume the content. Okay? I get it. But what you do in a situation is when you can see clearly, and it's never been easier to see what is going on in your fandom, even if it's just a small sample, it's never been easier. Everybody's posting this shit publicly on social media, right? So it's never been easier to see what the fans are saying. It's also never been easier to tell the fans, we hear you. Here's what we're doing about it. It's very simple. We release a product, okay? And the product is considered to be too expensive, and there's an outcry from fans. Oh, okay. Well, here's what you do. You turn around and you say, hey, we hear you. We've reassessed. We're knocking this thing down 20%. And then the fans, feeling as though they were heard, will react positively to that. And then you shift the online narrative to being like, hey, man, you know what? They got this one right. Because believe it or not, there are a lot of people out there that are going to be fair in that scenario. They're going to be fair in that scenario. I don't blame KK for not being more out there in front of the fan base when the fan base is so misogynistic. Curtis, I appreciate your opinion, but I 1,000% disagree. Like, maybe 1,000,000% disagree. I completely blame Kathleen Kennedy for not being out in front of the fan base. Because, first of all, I don't think the fan base is misogynistic. I think there's a portion of fans that are probably misogynistic, yes. I think there's another portion of fans that are maybe a little bit more, let's just say, conservative. And I don't even mean politically. I mean just in the sense of Star Wars. They just like the older shit, right? It's not misogynistic to have wanted Luke Skywalker to do more in the sequel trilogy. And by the way, if there are a bunch of fans that are misogynistic, the only way that you can really make that obvious and point that out and get beyond it is if you give them an opportunity to prove that it is just misogyny. And as the president of Lucasfilm, if you think that you don't have to come out and address these problems just because your fan base is misogynistic, then you need to quit. You're running a major that's so backwards to me. That feels super backwards to me. Exactly. This is what Fanjexture says. It says there's a large portion of fans that have legitimate complaints. They just don't have the social skills to express it in an adult way. That I believe. I do not believe there's a ton of misogynistic Star Wars fans. Are you kidding me? Like Leia, Padme, Ahsoka. You know what I'm saying? All heralded by many of the same fans that have a problem with Rey. That is a logical fallacy, dude. It's not misogyny. It's definitely not misogyny. All right. So let's get into that's all I want to say about that. I don't know what the solution is, but it continues to be one of the most frustrating things ever, where it's like personally, and I would love for us to get over this. I'd love for us to get into the next part. I don't think we get past this without Lucasfilm humbling themselves and admitting a lot of their mistakes. Period. I think Mark Hamill's letter, ill-conceived, poorly timed, doesn't even make sense. So thanks for that, Mark. You know what I mean? Again, I think until they can admit problems, because also there's this side of like, even if the fan base is toxic and crazy, which, you know, again, a degree of measure of that happens in all fan bases. In business, you don't judge your consumer. You try to understand them. You're in fucking business. You're providing a product and service and asking people to spend money. So what are you going to do to reach out to this fan base? You're going to try to change the fan base? Or are you going to try to understand the fan base? You know what I mean? Like, this is just another thing that I don't understand. It's business 101. I really don't get it. I don't think we move forward without Lucasfilm admitting and coming forward and saying, hey, man, yeah, we got a few things wrong here and there. But guess what? We're still in this. We're figuring this out. We're going to do better, and we're going to listen to the fans more. That's it. And I really don't get it. I don't get why they'd be so unwilling to just come out and say that. First of all, you don't even have to mean it. Another thing, business 101. But you got to at least say it. So crazy to me. So anyways, let's get into the, just put me back in the chatting setting. Put me back in the chatting setting. Last thing I want to say, and then we'll get into Q&A. And we could go, look, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have thoughts, and we can talk about what different people are saying in chat. The last thing I want to say here is that the Obi-Wan Kenobi series did get delayed to 2022. And what's really interesting about that is, as I told you before, Star Wars is in this unique position where they can sort of hide and fly in under the radar with a lot of the problems that they're having. Like a couple of months ago, the idea of pushing Obi-Wan Kenobi as a series into 2022 would have made major headlines because people would have said, oh, Ewan McGregor said they're just working on the scripts and they're going to start next year, which, by the way, I told many of you, Ewan McGregor has no idea what he's talking about. And I got those lovely people in the comment section being like, so you're saying you know more than Ewan McGregor? Yeah, motherfucker. That's exactly what I'm saying. Not his fault, by the way. He's doing his job. That's his job. He has to act like everything's gravy. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a month ago, the idea of pushing Obi-Wan Kenobi series to 2022 would have made huge headlines. Huge. But now it's just like, okay, well, it's Corona. You know what I mean? Oh, it's just what's going on. Delayed to 2022. This has nothing to do with the Rona. This has to do with, again, problems behind the scenes. Right? Well-documented problems behind the scenes. But ultimately, on the more positive side, I'm excited for that show. And I think it's good that they're having this time. I also think there's an interesting opportunity, and perhaps the reason they delayed it to 2022, do you guys remember when I said to you that there was a strange third option with the Obi-Wan Kenobi series where they might do something on Disney Plus and then also do something theatrically? Well, what do we know is coming out in 2022? The next live-action Star Wars movie, whatever it might be. And so in 2022, you have the next live-action Star Wars movie, and you've now pushed the Obi-Wan Kenobi series to 2022. I can't believe I'm saying this, but there might actually be a scenario that Lucasfilm's going to do the Disney Plus thing rolling into the theatrical release for Obi-Wan. That would be so bizarre. That would be so bizarre. But it is news, and so I wanted to let you guys know. But you know what? Let's get into Q&A because we're breaking all the rules and we're talking about Star Wars. And so I want to know. I'm going to keep my eye on the chat. It's time to just talk, guys. It's time to just talk. I did mention the Rona, yes. Yes, I know. Breaking all the rules. I did see your email. I got you. After this, I'm tearing into emails, bro. Let's see. With the virus, will Celebration be pushed back, do you think? I want to get my hands on some of the High Republic stuff. I do believe it'll be pushed back. Just call it Pacifico, and YouTube won't catch on. I mean, I think we're a little bit past that. We're in YouTube jail right now. And so I'm going to say Rona if I need to say Rona. You know what I mean? I do think Sam Shills asks about Celebration. I do think that Celebration will be pushed back. And I do think they'll just refund a lot of those tickets. You know what? I actually haven't. I have a really good connection at ReedPop, and I haven't reached out to him. And maybe I should just to see if he's doing okay. I'm sure that God, man, they're losing. It's got to be rough. It's got to be rough for them. You know what I mean? But it's also rough for everybody at the same time. So essentially, they could probably either like extend their contract, move their contract, or something like that. So I do think that Celebration will be pushed back. And again, the beautiful opportunity for Star Wars. Go figure your shit out. Go figure your shit out. And can you humble yourself? Can you just humble yourself? You know what I mean? With Black Widow getting pushed back, that means we won't be getting Falcon and Winter Soldier until after it comes out. I do believe that's true, yeah. I do believe that is true. What do I think about Luminous? I'm excited. I'm excited for the High Republic. I love the idea of the High Republic. I think it's going to be really, really cool. I am sort of questioning how do they feel about it though? Seeing the reception again, like what is their fucking problem? I can't look. This is why I don't talk about Star Wars. By the way, Brian O'Connor, I see your super chat. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you, man. One of the best morning streams of all time. Keep up the fantastic work, Josh, and the team of nerds. Well, I'm glad you like it. I don't know if it's one of the best morning streams of all time, but it's certainly one of the most real morning streams of all time.
One of the best morning streams of all time. Keep up the fantastic work, Josh and the team of nerds.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. And we got a little robot voice in there, too. So thank you. Yeah, so I'm interested in Disney's sort of approach and what they think about how the High Republic was received. Because, we haven't talked about this in a little bit of while, but I was really shocked about the High Republic. That is a math hat, yes. I am a huge fan of Andrew Yang. I donated to him multiple times. I'm a big fan of Andrew. I think he will be president in 2024. But we don't get political. That's about as political as I get. Is to say that I'm a fan. I'm a supporter. I was actually going to be a delegate for Andrew in Pennsylvania before things got crazy. Yeah, I'm going back to the High Republic stuff, man. It just blows me away how even there's a lot of reasonable people that had complaints about the High Republic. And again, right, take out the emotional reaction. And here's the deal. I had an emotional reaction to it as well. You guys remember, if you've been watching the show, I had an emotional reaction. I can't believe that motherfuckers got that upset about diversity and dinosaurs on a whiteboard. It did trigger me. It triggered me because I feel like there's a lot of anti-SJW baiters out there, right? And it's come into a whole new thing where it's like it's a fucking brand, and it's annoying. It's a stupid brand, in my opinion, right? So I got triggered by it. But at the end of the day, I took some time, and as I watched the more reasonable people, there were some major complaints about the High Republic. Number one, it looks like y'all did a lot of planning for these books and comics. Would have been super dope if that had happened with the sequel trilogy just a little bit more. And by the way, that is totally fucking fair. Of course, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's totally fucking fair. That is so fair that it baffles the mind that they wouldn't see that comparison coming. You know what I mean? Like, how did they not know that was a comparison that was coming? Totally fair. Another thing that I found to be totally fair from people that weren't crazy about the High Republic, where are the great EU writers? You're cultivating this team of the new current great Lucasfilm writers, some people that I'm quite fond of. But where are the great writers from the expanded universe? Ooh, I like that. By the way, James, thank you so much for the support, brother. I really do appreciate it. Filoni, Favreau, Chow. What other directors do you think that would be great for live-action Star Wars? Okay, so we'll shift. And I appreciate you, James, from reining me in from that rant. Thank you very much. So let's talk about that. That's a much more positive thing to talk about. Don't worry. I'm sure I'll rant in a little bit anyways. Directors that I think would be great for live action. Well, I'll tell you this. I'm very excited to see what Robert Rodriguez does in The Mandalorian Season 2. Robert Rodriguez, going back all the way to El Mariachi, has been a director I have very much enjoyed his work. I really like Rodriguez, man. I'm really excited to see how he handles aesthetically the Mandalorian. I think he's very, very good stylistically, but he's also a technology junkie. Very similar to George Lucas in the way that Rodriguez approaches technology. He loves it, man. He was one of the first directors to go completely digital. He loves digital. And when he shot Sin City, come on, the first Sin City, come on. I'm Ricky Bobby, and if you don't like the first Sin City, fuck you. It's pretty much where I'm at with that. My man was so good with the digital technology and the way that he blended the green screen and brought Frank Miller's vision to life. And with Mandalorian, the way that they have that huge screen, the way they use the technology, I'm very, very excited to see what he does in Star Wars. Very excited. Yeah, Rosario Dawson's great in Sin City as well. Great in Sin City. I love Rosario Dawson, man. I'm also excited to see James Mangold. You know, I know that we got, Maverick Pilgrim's in the building, and Mav is a huge fan of Indiana Jones. He's very excited for Indiana Jones 5. That's great. That's cool. Love you, Mav. For real, for real. But take James Mangold away from that and give him Star Wars. I just don't. James Mangold is too good of a talent. I want James Mangold to do Star Wars. I want it. So those are a couple of my opinions, man. Rodriguez, very excited to see what he does with Star Wars. And James Mangold. I really like James Mangold's work, man. Like all the way down. 310 to Yuma. Fucking brilliant. Day and Night. Fucking brilliant. Ford vs. Ferrari. Brilliant. Logan. Brilliant. I'm willing to sacrifice a great Indy 5 for a great Star Wars. Aw, man. I think you're just saying that. But you know what? You're very sensitive to my feelings right now. I feel as though you're doing a much better job in your communication than fucking Lucasfilm. Taika could pull out the Star Wars humor to a peak. Probably not trilogy person, but a standalone maybe. Yeah, maybe, yeah. I think we're all talking. I think, one of the things I think that would be really cool, man, is Russo brothers. Like, why not? Just let Feige come over, do the Russo brothers. Like, at this point, I'm sorry. Like, look, we'll go back to normal. We'll go back to reserve Josh. We'll go back to being chill tomorrow, but not today. Not today. I'm starting to get to a point where I'm like, I don't give a damn about any of these motherfuckers at Lucasfilm. I really don't. As far as, like, career-wise. Like, push them out of the way. Push them out of the way. And just literally bring in the MCU alum. Like, Feige should kick in the door and literally be like, you get out of here. You get the F out of here. And by the way, can we explain that Victoria Alonso is supposedly one of the most woke people in Hollywood, and she's Kevin Feige's second in command, and yet they have none of the problems that Star Wars has. Can we just acknowledge that for a second? It's not even the wokeness itself. Like, it's not that. It's just PR. It's just communicating. It's just trying to get the fan base to understand. And Feige also does a brilliant job of giving everybody their toys. You get your toys, you get your toys. Fanjecture, you're right. You're absolutely right. None is a reach. They do have some of those problems. I think the Brie Larson thing was probably their closest broach to that same problem and to that same situation. But I think they handled that relatively well. You know what I mean? I don't know if they've specifically talked to Brie or not, but Brie's attitude and Brie's communication has been way better. You know what I mean? Yeah, and I saw your message about Inhumans. I don't know. Maybe you didn't want to. Maybe you didn't. You retracted that, so we don't have to. Do you think that Godzilla vs. Kong will bomb? Or will it be an unexpected hit of the year, as it deserves, in my opinion, because I want the MonsterVerse to continue? When's it supposed to come out, Stormbreaker? By the way, that sounds like another great article by Stormbreaker for the Den of Nerds website. Oh, you meant Eternals? Yeah, but here's my thing about that. And this is just my anticipation of it. We don't know for sure. But, like, what's crazy to me is, like, Well, there's multiple layers to it, right? I mean, look, Feige has been very, very clear about wanting representation, about feeling as though that's important. And there's a lot of things that Marvel's doing that's, maybe sort of causes like a frictiony thing to certain groups of fans. But I really think that the big difference is that Marvel is giving it's a 4-quadrant brand, right? It's supposed to hit all 4 quadrants. Mass appeal. That's what we're talking about. Mass appeal brands. Marvel, despite messaging to maybe, let's say, one of those quadrants, particularly now a little bit more than ever, they've done a brilliant job of giving the core fan base exactly what the core fan base wants. And Star Wars in the sequel trilogy has really not. What's the biggest difference? Well, I think number one, a fucking plan. And not just a plan, a visionary plan. You know what I mean? Like Feige's plan is visionary. So a plan, number one. Number two, they give their most active base exactly what they want over and over and over again. So maybe it's not even so much about brushing up against the culture war. Maybe it's about making sure that your core product remains similar so that your core base continues to be happy. And then you can literally give, it's like literally that simple. You can give everybody the toys. I feel like Star Wars messed that up. And I don't know if Feige goes out and gag orders people. I don't know if he does that. I don't think that he does that. But all I know for sure is that, like, man, I really don't know. That's worth taking some time to think about. You know what I mean? That's really worth some time thinking about. They tried to please everyone with Rise of Skywalker, and it was like the worst film of the 21st century. So I won't go that far to say that it's the worst film. I appreciate that movie. I like it a lot more than most. But the rose-colored glasses are certainly off with Rise of Skywalker. I've watched it recently, and I'm just like, man, like they really did kind of Frankenstein this trilogy. Ultimately, they did. Josh, apparently the Rosario Dawson's contract has showed up as a multi-show deal. Yeah, that's awesome. That was sort of rumored before, and I'm glad, man. I'm happy for her. Look, I know that Rosario is embroiled in a lawsuit that some people think is a reason to completely not have her do what she's doing in Star Wars. But in my own personal research of that situation, it really feels like some bullshit. It really feels like some bullshit to me. And you'll also look at what Rosario has done positively for the community, for minorities. She's like, I think she's a great brand ambassador. I think she's done a lot of brilliant shit. And she's also a huge nerd. You know what I mean? So. This upcoming Marvel run isn't going to be as popular either way, so having the Marvel people work on Star Wars to fix it would be a good idea, I think. Star Wars isn't a brand that needs to grow. It's spanning multiple generations over 50 years. So I think I appreciate that, Wandering Dog. I think that's good insight, particularly with, look, I think, as I've said in the video on Sunday, the delay and everything could really serve Star Wars. It could really serve Star Wars well, you know? I think that that would be great. Maybe Star Wars doesn't need to necessarily grow as a brand, but I think that right now we're at this precipice where the next Star Wars and the future of Star Wars, like we're just gonna have to see, like how is this responded to by the fans? You know, because I think it's pretty clear we need an improvement on where the sequel trilogy was at. But I feel like Lucasfilm, especially under the leadership of Kathleen Kennedy, will not even come out and admit that. You know what I mean? Look, it's like one of those things, Rachel, where it's like, when it comes to that lawsuit, I mean, like, try to think of the probability. Okay, there's things like character witness and probability, and if you just look at the behavior of Rosario, you look at the circles she runs in, you look at the fact that she potentially could be a future first lady, and whatever you think of Cory Booker's politics, seems like he's at least on the light side of the force. What's the probability that she's actually like a horrible person and did this horrible thing when you juxtapose this one thing versus all the other things that we know about her? What's the probability? That's all. That's all that I would say. Yeah, I love this Doctor Strange shirt, man. Love it. Yes, Star Wars Santa says, listening to the fan feedback, acknowledging the valid criticisms, and promising to work harder to do better would go a long way. Yeah, I would agree with you. I would agree with you. I think that would be huge. Josh, as a Hispanic fan of Star Wars, I'm kind of surprised they don't have Hispanic representation right now. Well, the Cassian Andor series sort of looks to fix that. Is he not why am I blanking on homie's name right now? I keep wanting to say Diego Luna, but it's not Diego Luna. Is he not Hispanic? Is it Diego Luna? Is that his name? Pedro Pascal, I believe, is Hispanic, yeah. But maybe that doesn't count as representation because he has his freaking helmet on the whole time. You know what I mean? Rosario Dawson is Hispanic, yes. Giancarlo Esposito is also Hispanic. I feel as though your your statement about representation might be a little off, my friend. Hey. Maybe it's just a little off. You know what? Now you've got me on a conspiracy theory. Is all of Star Wars going Hispanic? How do you say Star Wars in Espanol? Somebody hit me. I'm sure it's beautiful. I've seen it on shirts before. Star Wars? Le Star Wars? They have no light-skinned guys, though. Star Wars. Yes, that's it. I've seen shirts with that on it. It's pretty dope. Star Wars. Dude, that shit is dope. Espanol is, what's happening? Uh, Guerra de las Galaxies. Dude, Espanol is such a cool language. All right, I'm going like 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes. Get your questions in. And I'm going back to normal, reserved Star Wars talk from now on. I'm not going to get emotional and talk about this stuff. But again, just to summarize, Mark Hamill, come on, bro. Like, come on, bro. Your whole, like, I really like Mark. I really think he's a great dude. And he's really cheeky and funny and everything like that. But it's like, I feel like the behavior over the last 3 years has been really all over the place. Come on, bro. Lupita Nyong'o is Mexican? Interesting. Until he writes another letter? No, man. I hope this is the letter that's like the letter to end letters. Where are all the adults? Yeah, man. I don't believe you, Josh. Josh, at what point do we say enough is enough with the old stories? Pitch a new Star Wars. Well, I'm writing my Star Wars fan fiction right now. Right now. Do you guys want to hear the opening crawl to my new Star Wars fan fiction? Oh, you don't? Okay, no big deal. We don't have to do that. No, nobody wants to hear it. No big deal. That's cool. We'll just go on to another question. I didn't want to talk about it anyway. Nobody cares about my Star Wars stuff. No, that's fine. No, that's cool. No, that's cool. I don't want to do it anyway. No, it's all good. No, don't worry about it. We'll talk about something else. Look, guys, I pride myself on being able to read my audience, being able to know what you guys are saying, and being very like having my finger on the pulse of what everybody's doing, and I can just clearly see that nobody wants to hear about that fan fiction Star Wars. So we're good. Okay. All right, I'll read it. This would be the opening crawl. It's called Star Wars: The Rising Darkness. Chet, this music? No. Turn that down. It has been 1,000 years since the last Jedi saved the galaxy. The Force is feared by most, and Force users are hunted down and imprisoned. The galaxy exists in a fragile peace between the Galactic Empire and the Republic Coalition. Each faction controls a large amount of territory, with the Republic controlling much of the Mid-Rim and the Empire holding the core worlds. Though there has been 100 years of peace, both sides remain ready for another galaxy-wide conflict. From the shadows, a new faction of Sith make themselves known to the Empire. In secret, they have thrived, building a massive fleet and training many warriors. Their leader, High Lord Val Mordium, seeks an alliance with the Empire to defeat a coming enemy from the unknown regions. The Emperor, Lucian Val, has opened up talks to the Sith, and the two sides have been in negotiations for weeks. Above the imperial capital of Coruscant, several Sith Star Destroyers lie in wait as the leaders of these factions contemplate an alliance and a new future for the known galaxy. That's it. I should get a Star Wars. I was thinking about it, Godfather, but I was like, I don't want to get in trouble. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. Ah, but how would Force users be imprisoned? Ah. You'll just have to read it. No, Taylor Lane coffee is amazing. It's just that for now I have to drink this horrible coffee that I have in this thing. What's your other comment, Anthony? Sorry, I didn't see it. With the next Star Wars trilogy movies, who is going to be the next Luke, Leia, Han to have pop culture impact like they did, in your opinion? I think they need to go unknowns again. Unknowns again. They need to go with unknowns. They need to find some incredible actors. They need to tell a great story. Pretty simple. Pretty simple, man. But that's what I would do. I'd go 1,000 years past episode 9. Where do you think WandaVision and Loki will be placed in phase 4 next year? WandaVision will likely be delayed all the way to the end of next year, running right into Doctor Strange 2. Will Morgan? Yeah, well, man. You know what stops me from being in Star Wars movies? Fucking auditions. Any thoughts on the AMC financial issue? My thought is that Chinese companies own 38% of AMC. Chinese companies own 38% of American cinemas. Or what's AMC stand for? American Movie Cinemas or some bullshit? It's not American. That's a whole nother thing. Oh, I'm grumpy, all right. I'm real grumpy. Clickbait? No, we talked about Mark. Talked about Mark a good bit. All movies Chinese. Yeah. That's an unfortunate, scary reality, man. Is Trinity up? Is Trinity streaming? Let's get a link to Trinity. Let's link to Trinity. Let's go over to Trinity's chat. Enough of angry Josh. I mean, I think that's an important distinction, Mav. I think that's an important distinction to make. But I frankly think that when most people say China and say like Chinese companies and stuff like that, they're not talking about the citizens. I think it's pretty well understood that we're talking about technically like a version of private companies that just are state. They're incumbent to the state, but it's really not even that deep. You know what I mean? Like nobody says Chinese companies own 38% of AMC and they're thinking of like farmers in China. Nobody's thinking that when they say that. You know what I mean? I'm blasting this link in again. Get on over there. Last question. Last question. Why do you think the Skywalker saga? Do you have characters that had pop culture impact like the original Star Wars did with Luke, Han, and Leia? It's very simple. It's very, very simple. It's a well-written movie with great archetypical characters, and the protagonist is great because he struggles a lot and somehow wins in the end. You know? Leia is an amazing character. Not a lot of people give Leia enough credit for being a badass. She's a badass. She flips the trope. She's a badass. How many movies do you know in general where you go to save the princess and the princess ends up being a badass? Right? Han is a smuggler with a heart of gold. Luke is a naive farm boy that just lost everything, lost his family, and wants to join in something bigger than himself. You know what I mean? So they're just simply great characters. It's just simply a great plot. Nap time. I'm totally drained from the rant fest today. I hear you, brother. I'm drained too. Let's go let the kind words and the cheer and the high energy of Trinity over at Second Street Marvel wash over us for the next hour and calm us all down. I'm going over there to say what's up. I hope to see many of you over there again one more time. Here is the link to good friend of the channel, Trinity Stream. We're going over there. We'll be back at it tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'll be much less grumpy, I promise. I love you guys. Take care of each other, but from a safe distance, social distancing and all that. As I always say, hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video. You're pretty quiet today, Chet. Was it a little too scary? Was Papa Josh a little too aggressive? No, that's cool. No, we can't hug it out because of social distancing. Yeah. No, it's cool. Air pound. Air pound.